The fight that ended my marriage started over dirty socks.
I screamed about the dirty socks again. The rage that poured out of me was so much bigger than the problem. He barely looked up from his phone, dismissing me with a wave of his hand, and that's when something inside me just snapped. All the years of resentment, the exhaustion, the unmet expectations, it all came flooding out. I accused him of being lazy, of letting me carry the weight of our entire lives by myself. I was shouting, my voice raw. He finally looked at me, his eyes tired, and said, "Nothing I ever do is good enough for you, is it?" That sentence should have stopped me. It should have made me think. But the anger was a tidal wave, and it just drowned everything. "You're useless," I spat out. "Why don't you act like an adult for once?" He didn't say another word. He just stood up, grabbed his keys, and walked out. The silence that followed the slam of the door was heavier than any of my shouting. Alone in the house, a strange mix of relief and guilt washed over me. I started thinking about how we used to be. I remembered when we were balanced, so in love. My ambition and his easygoing nature used to complement each other. But as my career took off, that balance shifted. Success changed our dynamic. My patience wore thin, turning into a constant, simmering resentment. I started pushing him, thinking that pressure would motivate him, that it would make him match my drive. But all it did was make him withdraw. The warmth we had was replaced by a growing distance. Small disagreements turned into nightly verbal warfare. We were always on edge. That evening, a friend called and invited me out. It felt like an escape hatch. At the bar, I laughed and joked, trying to build a wall around the pain I refused to face. But then my friend looked me in the eye and asked, "Are you happy?" I couldn't answer. I just deflected with a joke. But that question followed me home, weighing me down more than the drinks I'd had. When I walked in, he was there, waiting. His eyes were red and his voice was strained when he spoke. But pride and alcohol are a toxic combination. The fight reignited instantly. We threw accusations back and forth, each one sharper than the last, and then I crossed the line. A terrible, unforgivable line. I looked him dead in the eye and called him a pathetic loser. For a second, I saw something in his face I'd never seen before, and I thought he was going to hit me. Instead, he turned and punched the wall, the drywall cracking under his fist. Then he was gone again. The anger drained out of me all at once, replaced by nausea and a crushing wave of regret. I knew I had broken something that could never be fixed. The next morning, he wasn't there. A deep, cold fear started to settle into my bones. Days passed with no word from him. My anxiety grew with every unanswered call, every unread text. Finally, a message came through. He was safe, but he needed space. I buried myself in work, staying late at the office just to avoid the echoing emptiness of our house. A week later, he came back. He looked broken, completely exhausted. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked at me and said he wanted a separation. He said maybe some space would give us clarity, and to my own surprise, I agreed. Part of me was relieved. Another part was heartbroken. The confusion was overwhelming. He packed his things quietly. Each item he placed in a box felt like a memory being stored away forever. When he left, I walked through the silent house and stared at our wedding photos. I wasn't just mourning him. I grabbed a coffee mug, his favorite one, and hurled it against the wall, watching it shatter into 100 pieces. And then I just cried. I cried until I couldn't breathe, until the rage was gone, and all that was left was a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. The paperwork began. Every signature, every decision about dividing our life felt like reopening a fresh wound. My friends became my anchors. They reminded me I wasn't alone even when I felt like it. One night, the grief was so intense it pushed me toward making a really bad choice. I was spiraling, but my neighbor saw me. She stopped me and she was just kind. It was a simple act, but it was exactly what I needed. I ended up confessing everything to her, all the pain and anger and guilt I had bottled up for so long. She didn't judge me. She just listened. And then she told me that leaving a broken situation wasn't failure, it was courage. Her words planted a tiny, fragile seed of hope. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and emotional whiplash. Some days I felt strong, like I could conquer the world. Other days I felt completely hollow, like a ghost in my own life. My support system kept me going. I started trying new things, rediscovering parts of myself I had forgotten in the chaos of my marriage. I started painting again. The creativity returned, surprising me with moments of quiet joy. The day I signed the final divorce papers was surreal. There was no drama, no fighting, it was just final. Afterward, we stood outside the lawyer's office and hugged goodbye. The passionate love was gone, replaced by a quiet, sad acceptance. Driving home, I let myself mourn. I cried for the future we'd lost, but this time I didn't collapse. I walked through the rooms of my house, and for the first time, they didn't feel empty. They just felt like space, potential. I carefully packed away the rest of our memories, honoring what they were without clinging to them. Then I called a friend, and for the first time, I admitted I was sad, but I was also ready. That evening, I sat on my porch and watched the sunset. The chaos in my head was finally starting to quiet down. Reflection replaced blame. I could finally see my own cruelty, my own role in his pain, with honesty. I made a promise to myself. I would change the patterns, not just the partner. The loneliness was still there, but it didn't terrify me anymore. Real strength, I was learning, grew from accountability, not from trying to control everything and everyone. I learned that ambition without empathy is destructive. I learned that my words mattered far more than my intentions. The silence of being alone taught me humility. Healing required a kind of patience I had never practiced before. I started rebuilding my routines, but this time with kindness toward myself. The anger slowly softened into understanding. The loss became a lesson instead of a weapon I used against myself. I finally accepted my responsibility without drowning in self-hatred. The future felt uncertain, but it no longer felt empty. I was standing on my own, not broken, just transformed. I chose growth over bitterness. I knew that love would come back into my life someday, but it would be different, healthier. This ending, I realized, was really a new beginning. I was finally listening instead of shouting, and in the quiet, I found peace. It was a peace earned through a lot of pain, but it was mine. I was finally ready to live better. Thank you for listening to my story. If you're going through something similar, please know you are not alone. Remember to be kind to yourself. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about growth and healing.